because you cannot talk about National Signing Day without talking about a lot of SEC programs. And then you've got a program like Ohio State that's battling against a lot of SEC programs. And so we see the Buckeyes enter the day, and it looks really shaky. And then all of a sudden, nope. And then all of a sudden again, nope. And, dust is not settled yet. But it looks like Ohio State's going to pull out of this thing with the top 5 class. And although the season didn't end the way they wanted it to, it looks like signing day very much will end the way they want it to.
Sometimes it's about playing defense, right? You get to this time of the year, you look at Jeremiah Smith, the number 1 player in the country, they're going to lock him up. I mean, this one is done, right? So, and then you think about guys like Edric Houston. There was a crystal ball in for Alabama. Now Edric Houston stayed in the boat with Ohio State. So Ohio State, they are winners here, even though they have been playing defense throughout the last 24, 48 hours, and they're swimming with the sharks, man. I mean, you got Alabama, you got the likes of Miami, Oregon was able to come into St. Louis and grab a guy like Jeremiah McClellan as well. But this is a win for Ohio State to keep a guy like Jeremiah Smith in the boat. We talked about him being a generational talent. Then you think about the guys like Edric Houston as well. Big win for Larry Johnson, defensive line coach, and Brian Hartline on the offensive side of the ball.
We're going to get Dave Biddle here from Bucknuts to talk to us. That's been an exciting website to be associated with today, I would imagine. Do we have Dave? Hey, that is Uncle Biddle there. Hey, Bids, how you doing, bud?
Josh, always good to be with my nephew. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, man, it's been crazy. I mean, people are getting ready to jump off the Lane Avenue Bridge today, and now it's all good. As Cooper said, it's like damage control. It worked out well. There was a lot of smoke. They might lose Jeremiah Smith. They get him, and then Edric Houston looked like he was gone. I mean, now I can't trust Steve Wiltfong ever again. I was on my podcast today saying, well, if Fong says he's flipping, he's flipping. I'm kidding. I'm still going to trust Steve. He does a great job, but it worked out well for the Buckeyes in the end. They have the number 3 class according to the composite. So we'll see. They did lose McClellan, but that was expected. At least they were able to hold on to Jeremiah Smith and Edric Houston. They still need to do a better job recruiting on both sides of the line, in my opinion, guys. But, a pretty good day for the Buckeyes.
So, I mean, Biddle, I'm sitting here in Nashville, and so I'm not as dialed in on the Ohio State side as you are. I'm just hearing these rumors, and you're looking at Edric Houston, for example. Will he flip to Alabama? Then you've got the whole side rumor conveyor belt about Larry Johnson and what is his future. Defensive line coach, of course, historic defensive line coach there at Ohio State. So from your end, what do you guys hear about Larry Johnson? What is the future of that position unit there?
Yeah, it's so interesting, Josh, because, I'd heard last year that it was probably going to be his last year. And something changed, and I wasn't the only one to report that. So it's interesting. Ryan Day was asked point blank today, is Larry Johnson going to be the defensive line coach next year? And he said yes. And, some of us were, joking afterwards. Maybe that was just a way because he found out mid-press conference that he got Jeremiah Smith and Edric Houston after that. So that made the press conference a heck of a lot more interesting, seeing him react in real time to Jeremiah Smith. He left the room for the Edric Houston situation and came back in after about 15 minutes. So it's interesting. He was asked point blank about Larry Johnson. Is he going to come back? And he said yes, like I said. But a lot of us were joking. Was that just a message to Edric Houston? But it does sound like maybe Larry's going to come back for one more year. There's no doubt that there is negative recruiting going on. And why wouldn't you if you're another program? You'd be saying, look, this guy's got to be close to retirement. Even people close to Ohio State are saying it. You talk to Larry Johnson, he says, come on, I'm a spring chicken, I might be 71, but I feel young. He looks good. And he always points out, nobody asked Nick Saban about that. I'm thinking people ask Nick Saban about it, but seriously, but he compares himself. He's like, I'm the same age as Nick Saban, younger than Nick Saban. Nobody asked him about it. But yeah, man, it's definitely a thing. It's definitely a thing, and people are negative recruiting Ohio State, but it worked out in the end somehow with Edric Houston.
Bids, with the way the season ended, which was far less than ideal, and the negative energy that comes with that kind of ending, how pivotal was today? Because you know as well as I do, you make that field goal against Georgia, last year feels totally different. You don't turn the ball over against Michigan and give up an early score, maybe this year feels a lot different. Well, in signing day terms, landing these two guys versus missing out on one or both of them today, how different could things have been, and how big is this for Ohio State?
It's huge. Now, Josh, when you look back on this 3 years from now, are we going to say this was like a game changer? They were able to hang on to Edric Houston and Jeremiah Smith? Perhaps. We're talking about the number one player in the country and Jeremiah Smith, and, a 5-star, or at the, very least a very, very high 4-star in Edric Houston. But I think for momentum purposes, as you articulated, it was huge because, overall, you go 11-1 this year. You could say, not a bad year. You only lose to Michigan on the road by 6, but that's not how Ohio State fans are looking at it. It felt like they escaped a few games this year, and then, it wasn't just this year's loss to Michigan. It's the fact they've lost 3 straight years to Michigan. So it was huge, Josh. If they would have lost their best recruit in their class and their best defensive recruit on the same day, and Ohio State used to, pride themselves on flipping recruits, Urban Meyer, the spatula. If it's going the other way and, on the field and now in recruiting, that would have been not catastrophic for Ohio State. I don't want to overstate it, but it would have been really, really bad. So it was huge for them to hang on to both of those young men.
All right, brother, we appreciate it. Get back on that message board. I'm sure that the contingent over there on the front row has handled things very professionally and calmly today. I'm sure there's been no drama whatsoever.
This is why it's Buck Nuts and not Buck Rational Observers.
Yeah. I appreciate it, man. You can catch all of that action over there at bucknuts.com. Also, you heard Dave just talking about being in Ryan Day's presser, and mid-press conference, you're getting word, Ryan Day does, as a matter of fact, that they've landed Jeremiah Smith. Well, here's what that actually looked like. Really?
Yes, really. It's real.
There's pictures, there's video.
How nervous were you?
Yeah, you want to take us through your emotions real quick? How you feeling?
You got to address
The floor is yours.
You got to address that one.
Yeah, well, I don't know if everything's in yet. Jerry, you got to check to make sure it's in.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, you want to check with Justin?
Yeah, before I do something to get myself in trouble.
That's some heavy mouth breathing, followed by, I counted 24 seconds of dead air on Ryan Day's side. That's a long 24 seconds, by the way. Now, I know that there are some different schools of thought out there as to whether he knew if the paperwork was already in before he took the podium. He's over there asking Jerry Emig if the paperwork's in, so I'm pretty sure what we just saw was authentic, little weakening in the knees for just a second. So you know what it's like to mouth breathe into a microphone. You don't ever do that unless something really big has just happened. What a weight off the shoulders of that guy.
I think he's like one Jeremiah Smith away from going to that guy going to a different school, him being like, do I still want to do this anymore? I mean, it's been a rough couple of years. You think about how successful Ryan Day, Ohio State has been. You think about the standard in Columbus. They haven't lost to another Big Ten team outside of Michigan. You got people calling for this guy's head. It's pretty crazy, right? But this was a huge one. We talk about this. It might not be sexy, right? Because they had him in the boat, and Jeremiah Smith, this is what you're supposed to do. Same with Edric Houston, and we put out all these first-round receivers. This is a huge deal for Ryan Day from a perceptional standpoint, too. Like, you got to keep the train going, right? So to get this signature, and here's the other thing, Josh. I think Ohio State's been having second-guessing themselves over the last couple of years of like, hey, can we keep hanging and banging in the Southeast, right, with these guys in Florida and the Sunshine State and Georgia? Think about Ohio State and what maybe the future would look like for them if they lost to Jeremiah Smith, if they lost in Edric Houston, and they lost it to Miami and Mario Cristobal, and they lost it to Nick Saban in Alabama. Do we still want to do this in the land of NIL? We're going to go invest all these resources in these type of players, and we have them all the way to the 11th hour until not. This is a statement win when it comes to Jeremiah Smith and Edric Houston that Ohio State is here to play, and they're not going anywhere. And it might be frustrating the last 3 years what Jim Harbaugh has provided as a huge obstacle for the program. Listen, if you want to get over that, you got to continue to recruit guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., and for all intents and purposes, that's what we believe Jeremiah Smith is. So a huge win for the Buckeyes. The Jeremiah McClellan stuff, that happens, man. That's part of the business, right? So they got to keep trucking. Nobody's feeling sorry for him. They got to go out and they got to get the job done.